right, thank you, Vicki. Good to see everybody. Happy 4th, happy 250 years of independence from the King of England. Isn't that amazing? 250 years. So I hope you had a great day yesterday. I flew to Wyoming, and it's a conference I've gone to, but I was speaking at it this time. So Monday morning I flew to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, took a shuttle up into the Tetons near Alta, Wyoming, at a place called the Grand Targhee Resort. And I was talking to Steve and Cindy Fry, have been coming here for a while. Say hi to everybody. They have owned the Red Barn Farm for years up in Weston. They used to come to my church in the 90s, so glad to have you back. We were talking last Sunday, and they said, where are you going? Because we're going to go out there this week. It's like this, they're leaving tomorrow to go to Wyoming. I said, I'm going to this place called Grand Targhee Resort, and they said, that's where we're going. And their granddaughter works there, so did you get that picture? Look at this picture there. That's Isabella. Yay. So we were hanging out. You can't tell the beauty of the mountains from that picture. We were at the bottom of the ski lift where they take people up to the top of the mountain. But anyway, that's Isabella. So it was so great to talk with her. So I did. It was 50 degrees and raining almost the whole time. And I've been there several years and took warm stuff, so I froze my tail off all week. So then I fly standby because Dad worked for TWA, American Bottom Out, so I still fly standby on companion passes. And I failed to think about the soccer game Friday night in Kansas City. So I fly from Jackson to Dallas, and then all those early flights out of Dallas to Kansas City were filled with Colombians. So I got bumped, and then after it was too late to get to the game, I caught a plane. Got in late Friday night, and I kind of just chilled because I was pretty worn out from the conference, so I kind of chilled out all day yesterday. The Tour de France started in Barcelona, Spain. I'm a huge Tour de France. Thank you, Clay, for showing up with the Tour de France t-shirt. I've been an avid cyclist and Tour fan for decades, so yeah, Jonas Vingegaard. I'm sure all of you were glued, right? He won the first stage wearing the yellow jersey. Anyway, I don't know, just me and Clay know that one. So, and then 4th, I kind of scooted around watching everything that was going on all around America. And then I go to bed early Saturday nights, and so I tried to go to bed early. My neighborhood sounded like a war zone, I'm telling you, man. It was like, I'd just about really rather fall asleep, and I swear to God, somebody lit off a quarter stick of dynamite. And boom! And I'm like, oh! And so maybe after midnight, sometime after midnight, we kind of wound down. So anyway, happy 4th and happy 250th years. What an amazing experiment that 250 years has been. So pray we go for another 250, bringing freedom. So we're in this series called Exploring the Wonders of Nature. And I have been a nature lover my whole life. And when I was an early teen, I fell in love with John Denver. Because his songs, if you've never been a John Denver fan, they're just filled with nature references. Well, you can think in the late 70s, I became a big prog rock fan. And so I kind of thought John Denver was not very cool. So I kind of set him aside for a while, even though I knew about every song he'd ever written, right? And then the 80s hit and heavy hair metal bands came to the forefront. And, the post-punk scene came out. I was into U2 and bands like that. And then the 90s hit and the grunge scene. And so John Denver kind of remained in this land of uncoolness. And yet, at the same time, I started revisiting him. Every time I went to the mountains, which was 2 or 3 times a year, I had to put on Rocky Mountain High and all these great John Denver nature songs. Well, much to my surprise and delight, when FIFA decided to come to America, for the World Cup, guess what their theme song became? Take Me Home, Country Roads. Friday night, it looked like 70,000 Colombians singing to the top of their lungs, Take Me Home, Country Roads. This pastor's heart was just filled with joy, I tell you. I wanted to be there singing right next to him, so I was going to lead you, but I can't stay on tune or stay in the right key, pitch, all that. So I asked Sam to, I want you to stand, and I want you to sing as loud as the Colombians here, all right?
There's not 70,000 of us.
I know. It's just, that's why you got to sing harder.
Country road, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country road, almost heaven. West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. Life is old there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, growing like a breeze. Country roads, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country road.
And yay, Columbia won.
Colombia beat Ghana. I was coming off the plane with a guy from Kenya, and he was so proud of the teams from Africa. Egypt surprised everybody, right? And, anyway, it's pretty crazy. All right. Exploring the wonders of nature. If you read the Bible, did any of you do that? You'll notice that the Bible is full of nature references. And next week I'm going to be talking about mountains, by the way. But today we're going to be talking about living water and fishing. All right. Now, what's interesting is if you go into the land of Israel and around Israel, it's a very arid, desert-like land. So when you look in even Egypt, Moses out of Egypt, it's very, very deserty, right? So, but the terrain is basically you have desert, water, and mountains. So it's not surprising to see people like Moses and King David and Jesus. If you look at Jesus, where did he go to kind of get away and get time with God? Well, he went to the desert, right? Remember the 40 days of temptation? He went to the water many times, out on the Sea of Galilee. He was baptized in the Jordan River. And he goes to the mountains to get away and pray. Gave the Sermon on the Mountain, right? And so there's all of these beautiful nature things. In the Celtic spirituality tradition, so this would be from Ireland and particularly influenced by St. Patrick, they had this concept that they called thin places. Thin places. Have any ever heard that concept, thin places? Let me see. I love this concept because basically they felt like there were places in the world that, by the way, one of them is called the Giant Causeway up in Northern Ireland, and I've been to that. People from all over the world go to that place. Why? Because they feel like it's spiritual and has certain energy vibes in these places that they call thin places in Celtic spirituality. People go to Sedona. I think there's places there that have this sort of spiritual energy. The Celtic description of it was there are places on earth where there's just a thin veil between heaven and earth. It's like where heaven and earth basically come together and there's almost no difference. And so I don't know if you have any of those places. Might be by the water, might be in the mountains, there's not a lot of woods in the Middle East where Jesus was around, so you don't get a lot of stuff about woods, right? But water, mountains, and desert. How many of you find spiritual renewal in places next to water? All right, that's a lot. How about ocean? How many are ocean people? Okay, rivers, lakes, anybody? All right. How many of you love the mountains and that's your place for renewal? That's my place. I'm a mountain dude, all right? How about deserts? Anybody desert people? There's some really beautiful places in the desert, you know? But yeah, I find Americans aren't big into deserts, but other people around the world are. And there's beauty in the deserts as well. So as we think about this, I want to talk today a little bit about water. And our church is called Living Water. Isn't that interesting? Do you know in the Middle East, in the southern part of Israel, there's a body of water called the Dead Sea? Anybody been to the Dead Sea? I actually went into it, and it's real easy to float in the Dead Sea because there's so much mineral deposit there. Why is it called the Dead Sea? Yeah, there's no fish in the Dead Sea. There's no like biological life. There's bacteria and there's minerals, but there's no like biological life in the Dead Sea. And a part of it is because there's no outflow. Rivers flow into the Dead Sea. Nothing goes out of the Dead Sea. And the type of sun that it gets, the altitude level, and the minerals beneath the Dead Sea all lend it to where it just constantly evaporates. Water goes in, evaporates, and then it has 10 times the saline content of the ocean. 10 times. So you can literally just lay on your back and just float, and it just buoys you up. It almost feels like you're on a mattress that I sleep on, and you know, like a waterbed almost. So anyway, if we bottle up the blessing of God, I think this is a great analogy. If we don't become a reservoir of receiving the blessing of God and then a release of that blessing to others in generosity, then our lives, I think, kind of become like a Dead Sea. We're not made to bottle up all these blessings and be stingy and greedy. We're made to be a flow of God's life and resource. We're to receive it, water coming in, living water coming in, and then we're to allow it to be dispensed, living water going out to others, loving others, blessing others, and being a true source of love everywhere we go. We can bless others with that love. And the other thing I love about water that is living and alive, full of fish, is I love fishing. Any of you like fishing? All right, got a few. Ryan is a fisherman. And you know how I asked everybody, so Gina's been up and others have been up. We've had Jennifer up. Ryan's going to be up. If you have a love for nature and you want to share with us, please let me know. Ryan has a story about fishing that he's going to tell you and give a little insight into his love for water and fishing. So come on up. Plus, Ryan's a veteran, and it's 4th of July weekend, 250 years. Let's thank Ryan for his service to our country.
All right, here we go. I appreciate that. It was my honor to do that, first of all. But this really moves me because if y'all get the chance or don't know me, the first thing I love to do is fish. I get the great opportunity to hang out with my significant other, Miss Kristen Sloan, and we get a lot of time in nature. And I spend a lot of time sitting on a river by myself. And I'll tell you, some cool things happen when you just sit and listen. And the last 2 sermons about the connection between trees and water, right? One day I was fishing on the side of the river, the mighty Missouri River, right down here off of Shoto, where you would think, but you can find beauty anywhere you go. I was sitting there, and I had a beaver come no further away from me and Pastor Fred, and he sat there with me for 3 hours. He cleaned himself and sat there with me, and I didn't move. I just sat there and stared at this little creature. And then everything I've been through in my life, and I'm watching this big old river and the trees around, and I'm just in awe, right? Like, why are you hanging with me, first of all? And then we get these sermons, right? The energies, the connections, the trees, the roots. We are all connected, and I truly believe that. The way you walk and carry yourself is energy. And we're all walking and sending energy to the ground and connection to each other in love and passion. And I found out sometimes you learn a lot by just sitting and listening and the energy and stuff that comes. So with that said, and with that experience, I just had a couple things that I wanted to share. And one of them was from Psalms. And it's Psalms 1 through 3. And it says, blessed is the ones who do not walk in the step with the wicked, or stand in the way of that sin, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law daily and nightly. That person is like a tree planted by the streams of water, within yields its true fruit in its season, and those leaves do not wilt, and whoever they do prospers. I love that statement. And then the last one I'll leave you with, for me personally, you could put your name in it, and it's from 2 Corinthians 9:8, and just put your name in front of it. I am Ryan, and I'm in abounding grace by God. So I appreciate your time. Thank you for letting me share that story with y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate it. All right. So, Jesus, when he began his earthly ministry, calls us to rethink, repent, for God's kingdom is here. And he talked about the kingdom. He went about and healed. That was the presence of the kingdom. He met people with deliverance, the presence of the kingdom. He built community, the presence of the kingdom, forgiveness and love, the presence of the kingdom. Jesus did this all the time. And then he started calling his disciples. One of the first was, guess what? A fisherman. Peter, and Peter's brother Andrew was a fisherman. And guess what? James and John, the sons of Zebedee, they were fishermen. So 4 of the disciples were literally commercial fishermen on the Sea of Galilee, making their living from there. And he looks at Peter and says, Peter, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And he just said, okay, and he just starts following Jesus. How many of you would some dude walks up to you and says, follow me, and you just leave your job and take off? Okay, cool, let's go. Of course, I think the word about Jesus had already gotten out before them. There was a buzz going on, and so I think there was a little bit more gravitas to that invitation than just a stranger, right? But nonetheless, Jesus called him to be a fisher of men. And I think what that's talking about is allowing living water to flow through us to be a blessing to others, and to live this life of love and grace and forgiveness and gratitude, and discover gifts and skills and our contribution to the world around us with how we're gifted to make a difference in the world for love and grace and beauty. And so that's what that calling is about as we think about living water. Jesus said the kingdom of God is within you. And he said that this living water can bubble up from inside us. Living water contains living biological creatures. I started fishing. By the way, pray for my mom. She woke up with a fever this morning and is at the hospital right now. So, with my sisters. So, hope everything's okay there. But pray for her. But my dad put 2 things in my hand as young as I can remember. One was a basketball, and the other was a fishing pole. I mean, as young as I can remember, I've been playing with a basketball, and I've been fishing. And I grew up fishing the lakes and streams and ponds of the Midwest. I can even remember going up to Minnesota and doing that kind of stuff. But since then, as a kid, I have expanded that fishing scope to the Atlantic Ocean, to the Gulf of Mexico, to the Pacific Ocean, and to Alaska, and I've been fishing up. You know all these pictures where you see the bears catching salmon right out of the air? That's at a place in Alaska called Brooks Falls. And I was down below Brooks Falls in my waders doing some fly fishing one year, and a big old grizzly bear comes walking out of the woods into the stream that I was fishing in. And so I was like kind of trying to ignore him. And I just kept throwing my line out there, and doing my fishing thing. And he just kept getting closer and closer. So I finally took my phone out. Thought, well, I'm gonna video this thing. I should have shown this to you. I have it on video, but I forgot to cue it up today. So I took video, but then he kept getting closer and closer and closer. And pretty soon I'm like going, uh-oh. So I put my phone in my pocket, and you're not supposed to run from grizzly bears, because they're way faster than you. So I'm thinking about, and you're kind of not supposed to like look them straight in the eye, because that's like a aggressive move. So I just keep fishing and ignoring him, but he just keeps getting closer and closer and closer. And then finally he just turned and he just stared at me. And then all of a sudden he goes, oof. My line was still out. I almost did something in my pants. I ran out of my fishing hole. I ran up the bank. I got up to the top of the bank, turned around, hoping he wasn't following me. And that thing went right where I was fishing, took my fishing spot, and started trying to catch fish where I was fishing. When a grizzly woofs at you, you're not supposed to run, but I made it out alive. So anyway, I got lots of fishing stories from all around the world, and they're fun stories. There's a fun story with Peter about a fish. I want to read it to you. On their arrival in Capernaum, the collectors of the temple tax came to Peter and asked him, don't your teachers pay the temple tax? Okay, so every person in Israel, ancient Israel, paid a tax. It's 2 drachmas to the temple to help support all the things that went on in the temple. It's basically like supporting the church or the synagogue or the mosque or whatever. But money went to the temple to support the priesthood, which have been like the pastors and all the functions that go on in the temple, okay? But Matthew's gospel, listen, this was written after 70 AD. The temple was destroyed by Rome in 70 AD, literally razed to the ground. And the temple functions no longer were in effect. They completely destroyed the temple 70 AD. Guess what the Romans did for the temple tax? They continued to make the people pay the temple tax, and it went directly to the pagan Roman emperor instead of to support the temple. So they kept the temple. And guess who owned the Sea of Galilee at this point? Rome did. So any of the commercial fishing that came out, there was a 25 to 40% tax on all the fish that you caught out of the Sea of Galilee by the Roman government. So here somebody's like, you know how they challenge Jesus, hey, do your guys pay the temple tax? And basically everybody knows it just goes directly to Rome now at this point, right? This was after Matthew was written, so this is a bit of a story. So I think it's interesting that Jesus tells Peter, what does he tell Peter to do? Does anybody remember this story? He says, go and throw your line in. So by the way, most of the fishing was net fishing in first century, and commercial fishing was all net fishing. There were circular nets that you could throw out and throw a big circle with lead weights on the edges, and then it would sink to the bottom and then kind of collapse in, and you'd pull fish out that way. There are also big fishing nets that, like, say, between 2 boats where you'd go out. By the way, the Sea of Galilee is not that huge, but it's got mountains all the way around it, and it's much smaller than, say, like Lake Tahoe. So about 65 square miles of water, okay? And so these big commercial boats would bring in fish, but it was taxed 25 to 40% by Rome. So, Jesus is kind of like, hey, you know, the kids of the Roman emperor don't pay taxes. And Jesus was kind of like, and you're kind of like a child of the king. So you don't really need to pay taxes either. The one true king. But, he says, but it's okay. There's other ways to creatively resist the empire, right? So he says, why don't you just go throw a line in the lake and you'll catch a fish, and in the fish's mouth there'll be 4 drachma, just enough for Jesus and Peter to pay their temple tax. So Peter goes out, throws a line, and pulls the fish out. And lo and behold, there's fish. So who owns the Sea of Galilee? Rome. And who are they paying the taxes to? Rome. So it's a little bit ironic, and I think it's kind of humorous. I think people would have laughed in Jesus' day because it's kind of like getting money from the IRS, to pay the IRS. Wouldn't that be nice? All right. So it's I think it's a bit of humor in this story, but it's also a story of how God provides, right? And Jesus said that this living water can bubble up within us and be a source of life for us and for others. And so there's this beautiful image of how water can bubble up within us. The Spirit's life within us can bubble up and be a blessing to others. So I'd like to do a short little meditation with you around water. So, are you awake? All right. Why don't you just get in a nice, comfortable, seated position. Maybe close your eyes. And just take a couple of deep breaths. And I want you to picture yourself beside a stream or a river. Pick your favorite stream, river, creek, a flowing body of water, teeming with life. I have a place up in Copper Mountain, a little creek that I've sat beside for years, and I always think of that little spot. Hear the noises, smell the smells, picture that stream with fish in it, teeming with life. And then what I want you to do is, if you have any worries or fears, what I want you to do is picture a big leaf falling out of a tree, and write on that leaf with your imagination whatever you're worried about or whatever you're fearful about. It might be a job, your career, your kids, your health, your kids' health, whatever it might be, something that you kind of worrying about, fearful about. And then just write the name, picture yourself just writing the name of that on the leaf, and the leaf falling into the river. And then the river just taking that fear and washing it down the river or the creek. Whatever fear, whatever worry, just write it on a leaf. See that leaf landing on the river, the creek, and then just see it just kind of floating away down the stream. And now go back to that river or that creek, and now what I want you to do, it's a nice warm day, you're a little hot. I want you to jump in it. Picture yourself jumping in that creek, jumping in that river. Lay back and float, or float down the creek or the river. Get yourself wet with the water. Feel yourself just being enveloped in this living water, this life-giving water. We all need water to live, and that water symbolically can be the life-giving spirit that we receive and that we allow flow through us. So just Play in the water, bathe in the water, cleanse yourself in the water, be renewed in the water. My crystal clear creek is so pure, floating out coming out of the glaciers that you can drink it. Just drink the water. And allow the living water that Jesus talks about, that Spirit of the living God filling us, overflowing us, cleansing us, bathing us in this life-giving love. And then imagine yourself everywhere you go being a blessing to others, giving that life away. Love, grace, mercy, forgiveness, beauty, creativity, songs, the joy of life, gratitude, the source of living water bubbles up from within you. Let's sing now as we continue to reflect.